To settle in this country forever is not a right, but a privilege, and it must be earned.
What Shabana Mahmood, UK Home Secretary, just announced could completely change your future in the UK. One of the biggest UK immigration shakeups in 50 years is here, and it reaches from NHS visas and settlement rules all the way to small boats and asylum. If you're a migrant worker, care worker, student, refugee, or family member, in this video, we're breaking down 8 key points of Shabana Mahmood's new migration overhaul, using real facts from official government statements, parliament debates, and major news outlets, so you understand exactly who wins, who loses, and what it means for you. Stay with me to the end, because the final points are where the real shock is, especially for people coming via small boats, asylum routes, and long-term residents who thought they were safe. What exactly has Shabana Mahmood announced? Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary in the Labour government, has launched what she calls the biggest overhaul of the UK's legal migration model in 50 years, alongside a separate but connected crackdown on asylum and small boat crossings. There are now 2 big pillars to her plans: new rules for legal migrants, work visas, NHS and care workers, students, family visas, and settlement, ILR. New rules for asylum seekers and small boats, tougher conditions, longer waits, and a Danish-style model aimed at deterrence. Let's go into the 8 key points you need to understand. Key point 1. ILR goes from 5 years to 10 years for most migrants. The first huge change is about indefinite leave to remain, ILR, the right to settle permanently. Under Mahmood's proposals, the standard qualifying period for most migrants to get ILR will double from 5 years to 10 years. Instead of working in the UK for 5 years and then applying for settlement, many migrants will now need to spend 10 continuous years in the UK, meet new contribution tests, we'll come to that, and keep renewing their visas during that time. Commentators describe this as a move from a time-served model to a contribution-based model, meaning that just following the rules is no longer enough. You must show you've actively contributed to the UK. For you, if you're on a skilled worker, health and care worker, or other long-term route, this could mean more fees, more renewals, more pressure, and a much longer journey before you feel secure. So if time alone is no longer enough, what exactly counts as a contribution? That's where key point 2 hits. Key point 2, stricter conditions, English, income, NI, and no debt to the state. Mahmood's model doesn't just extend the time, it tightens the rules for who qualifies to stay. Under the new settlement framework, most migrants will need to meet stricter universal conditions, including a higher English language level, up to B2, A-level equivalent for settlement in many cases, passing the Life in the UK test, earnings above the income tax NI threshold for a set period, evidence of sustained national insurance contributions, no criminal record, a tougher suitability test is being designed, and no debt to the state, no unpaid NHS charges, tax debts, or other government debt. Law firms summarizing the proposals describe this as a part suitability test, basically a powerful new filter that gives the Home Office more reasons to refuse settlement even after 10 years. For many migrants, especially low-paid workers and people who've had NHS debt issues, this could turn settlement into a high-risk, high-pressure journey. But there is a twist in these rules. One group still gets a faster track: frontline NHS workers and public service roles. Let's talk about that. Key point 3, special rules for NHS workers and frontline roles. Mahmood has stressed that the UK must reward those who keep public services running, especially in the NHS and other frontline sectors. Under the new plan, there will be a 5-year pathway to settlement for skilled frontline public service workers. This is expected to include many NHS staff like doctors and nurses. However, that doesn't mean all health and care workers are protected. Reports suggest that over 600,000 health and care workers who arrived in what's been called the Boris wave of high migration might actually face waits up to 25 years for settlement if they claim benefits under the new system. So the message is double-edged. Frontline NHS professionals who stay in stable jobs and avoid state support could still gain faster routes. But care workers and lower-paid health staff who struggle financially or need benefits or social housing could face much longer, more fragile pathways. And that links directly to the next huge change: who can access benefits and social housing and when.
Key point 5. No benefits or social housing until British citizenship. One of the most explosive parts of Mahmood's plan is the proposal to block most migrants from accessing welfare benefits and social housing until they become British citizens, not just when they get ILR. Today, many long-term migrants with settled status, ILR, can access certain benefits and council housing, depending on their situation. Under the new blueprint, benefits and social housing would mostly be available only once you obtain full citizenship. Migrants who arrive via irregular routes, for example small boats, could end up waiting up to 30 years before they qualify for settlement and then citizenship, meaning decades with limited safety net. This is being sold as a shift to a contribution-first model. You contribute for a long period before you can draw from the system. Critics, including NGOs, unions, and some Labour MPs, say this risks creating a permanent underclass of long-term residents with weak rights and constant insecurity. Supporters argue it will restore public trust by showing that citizenship, not just residence, is the real gateway to full access. So that's legal migration and settlement, but Mahmood's shakeup doesn't stop there. It hits asylum and small boats even harder. Key point 5. Refugees move from 5-year security to 20 years uncertainty. Let's turn to asylum and refugees. Previously, many successful refugees could move from refugee status to permanent settlement after about 5 years. Under Mahmood's new direction, that is being ripped up and replaced with something much tougher and more temporary. Key changes include refugees would typically receive 30-month, 2.5-year periods of leave renewed again and again instead of a straight 5-year route. There are proposals for up to 20 years wait before some refugees can apply for permanent settlement. The earlier automatic right to family reunification has already been suspended, and people may now have to use standard family visa routes with all the fees and income thresholds that involves. Campaign groups say this will trap people in limbo, always safe enough to not be deported, but never secure enough to truly settle. Mahmood argues that this is necessary to restore control, reduce pull factors, and rebuild confidence in the asylum system, which she says is currently broken. If that sounds harsh, it's because the model is inspired by Denmark, and that leads us to the small boats and deterrence strategy. Key point 6. A Danish-style crackdown on small boats and asylum pull factors. Mahmood has repeatedly said she sees illegal migration as something that is tearing our country apart, and that tackling it is a moral mission. Her new approach borrows heavily from Denmark's asylum model, which is known for treating refugee status as strictly temporary, making it easier to remove refugees when conditions in their home country change, restricting family reunion and other rights to reduce pull factors. In the UK version, the shakeup includes tougher human rights balancing, putting greater weight on public safety and border control over family life rights in some cases. A focus on faster deportations, especially for people judged to have unmeritorious claims. More power to re-detain and remove people who re-enter after deportation. a clear political message. The UK is not a soft touch for people arriving via small boats. This comes amid rising small boats arrivals, more than 39,000 crossings this year, up around 19% on 2024, according to some reports. Mahmood's team says tougher rules and weaker benefits will gradually reduce those numbers, though research on deterrence is deeply divided, and many experts say people often flee regardless of policy signals. But deterrence isn't just about rules inside the UK. Mahmood is also turning up the heat on other countries. Key point 7. Visa bans and pressure on countries that refuse returns. To make her asylum and small boat strategy work, Mahmood needs other countries to take back their nationals when the UK wants to deport them. She has publicly warned that the UK may suspend visas for citizens of countries that refuse to play ball on returns, essentially using visa bans as leverage. Key elements here: threatening to block or restrict visas for countries that refuse to accept deported migrants. Linking this to a wider effort to speed up removals and reduce hotel and asylum accommodation costs. Exploring new returns agreements and expanding schemes like the one-in, one-out style cooperation with France on channel crossings. Critics say this risks diplomatic conflicts and may punish ordinary travelers and students from those countries. Supporters say it's necessary if the UK is serious about ending the small boats business model. All of this is already controversial. Inside Parliament and the Labour Party itself, the backlash is loud.
Key point 8. Political backlash, human impact, and what it means for you. Mahmood's reforms have triggered a huge political and social reaction. Within Labour, some MPs and activists say the asylum and settlement plans are too harsh, risk copying far-right rhetoric, and will leave refugees and low-paid migrants in permanent insecurity. Opposition parties like the Conservatives and Reform UK have, in some areas, welcomed the tougher stance, but many still argue Labour is not going far enough on small boats. NGOs, migrant charities, and unions warn of greater bureaucracy and backlogs, more family separation, millions of people living long-term in the UK with weak rights and constant fear of refusal. Meanwhile, the Home Office insists these reforms are needed to restore order and control after years of failed experiments like the Rwanda scheme, and to secure long-term public consent for having an asylum and migration system at all. So, what does all this mean if you want to live, work, or stay in the UK? Here's the bottom line in simple terms. If you are a skilled worker, health and care worker, or other legal migrant, expect longer routes to ILR, usually 10 years instead of 5. Tougher conditions: B2 English, clean record, no debt to the state, NI contributions, minimum earnings. Some faster routes if you are a frontline NHS worker or high earner, but also big risks if you have to rely on benefits. If you are an asylum seeker or refugee, settlement may move from a 5-year route to 20 years with repeated temporary leave. Family reunion is harder and more restricted. The system will feel more temporary, more conditional, and more focused on removals. If you're thinking of coming via small boats or irregular routes, the message from Mahmood is blunt. The UK will be harsher, not softer. Longer waits, fewer rights, and deliberate removal of pull factors like benefits and fast settlement. And very importantly, many of these measures are currently in the form of policy statements and consultations, not all final law yet. For example, the settlement overhaul is going through a consultation running into early 2026, and details could still change. This is not just another immigration headline. This is a complete rewiring of how the UK treats migrants, from NHS nurses and care workers to students, families, and people arriving on small boats. In this video, we broke down 8 key points of Shabana Mahmood's migration shakeup, from the new 10-year ILR rule to the no benefits until citizenship model, to the Danish-style crackdown on asylum and small boats.
These changes could shape the next 10 to 20 years of UK immigration, so don't just share your opinion in the comments. Protect yourself with real information. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update on UK immigration news and visa rules.